Yes, the Airbnb bust is real. It's always been real. It's been that way for about a year. And this is going to put a lot of Airbnb owners out of business, but only a lot, not all of you. There's going to be one type of Airbnb host that has what it takes to survive this otherwise disastrous era of being an Airbnb host. My name is Rakidzich. My Airbnb portfolio is exposed to 8 cities right now, over 150 doors, and we're seeing a lot of things, good and bad. In this video, I'm going to explain to you what the bust is, how the bust is happening, and who the bust is going to take out. Hopefully you're not one of them, but let's find out. Let's jump in. Welcome back, YouTube world. I wanted to not record anything until I was done unpacking in my new space, but this is an important topic, so this is what you're going to get. There are 3 hosts that are getting crushed right now in the Airbnb bust. And those 3 hosts, I'm going to offend some of you. 1, those of you who don't have the guts to run your business the way that it has to be run right now in a hard situation. 2, those of you with too much pride or ego to do what has to be done because you feel too entitled. And 3, some of you are just so new to the space that you didn't know that there was content that you could digest on how to run a business that is an Airbnb business. Many of you don't know that you're running a business. A lot of you are hoping for an investment thing. And that's where you're here. Now, for those of you who are new here to this channel because you're getting your butts kicked, welcome to the channel that gives you free content on how to run your Airbnb business. Wish you would have found the channel sooner because a lot of what I'm about to tell you was available a year ago. And if you're here with less occupancy, not enough money to cover your mortgage payment, you could have fixed it a year ago. And that's really on you. And I'm going to say this to make you uncomfortable because the Airbnb space, the short-term rental market, is not some easy street passive investment space. It's full of killers out there. Marriott, Hilton, Ritz-Carlton, these are short-term rental companies, and they've always been that way, running hotels. Now, there's a lot of companies that are gunning for Marriott. They're gunning for Hilton, but they're doing it through apartments. They're doing it through homes. They're doing it through short-term rentals. There are companies like Vacasa, Barsala, Sonder, Zeus. There's companies that have already died. Their markers are already on the wall from COVID. We're talking Lyric, Stay Alfred, companies like that. There are good companies with smart people who've gone out of business when hardship like this has struck. Now, why are we in the Airbnb bust? What that is really more speaking towards the ownership side, but it still affects the entire industry. See, short-term rentals is a low barrier to entry business. Anybody can get into it. All you need to have is a front door and a couch or a bed, maybe like an air mattress. Airbnb was started to put air mattresses in living rooms. That's just how it was. Now it's changed to everything you see here. Buying real estate has always been an attractive endeavor for anybody who wants a safe, surefire way to diversify their investments. You make your money in tech, you make your money in your career, you make your money doing whatever, and you're like, I don't know what to do with my money. All I know is the one thing I've ever done. So now that you've only done the one thing you've ever done, real estate is usually one of the safest things you can do with your money. You know, put money in the stock market, buy some real estate. These are the first 2 things anybody ever thinks of. No one thinks, oh, I want to go start a business, right? That's a rare thing. What happened here though, is investors bought into something as if it was real estate and they ran themselves right into owning a business and didn't even know it. Short-term rentals is an active management strategy. In a way, it's like day trading for the stock market, right? You can buy some mutual funds, you can buy some stocks that you never have to sell, like some blue chips, and you can just run them up for decades or whatever. You make a little bit of money. Now in real estate, you do the same thing. You become a landlord, you have a property manager, you collect a monthly rent check. That's your typical. Getting into short-term rentals is like becoming a day trader in the short-term rental market. But a lot of people are paying somebody else to do the day trading for them. And this is where all the losses are coming from. There's a middleman called a co-host in the middle, typically here. And this is where a lot of the fat in the deals are. And what I've been saying for the last year for any owners out there is fire your co-host and learn to run your business yourself because winter is coming.
We can't face it alone.
And when all the revenues start to dry up, those people who are not paying 25% of revenue to some third-party manager are going to have some cash left in their pocket. Otherwise, if you are an owner and you have a co-host, for every $10,000 you make, $2,500 goes to them and you keep $7,500. Where for somebody like us, we don't have that expense. I was going to say that there's 3 types of hosts that are going to survive this, but they all have the one thing in common. Let me go over the 3 so you can see what the commonality is. Owner operators, like I just said, are one of the subgroups that have what it takes to get through this. An owner-operator has a direct relationship with their property. They own it. They have a lower operating cost than a lot of people because they have a mortgage, they have their utilities, and they have their own housekeepers, and they operate that thing. Somebody like me who does arbitrage, my holding costs are higher because I'm not only paying off the landlord's mortgage, I'm paying off his cash flow, a little bit more. As an owner-operator though, you're gonna save about that 25% because paying the co-host is what makes it all sorts of expensive. Number 2 are professional scaled operators. Completely in-house operators. And what that means is somebody like me who does arbitrage, we have to get to scale to in-house everything. I have about 155 properties. properties, and I pay my housekeepers by the hour. Some of you get mad at me for paying too little, but we pay about $14 or $15 an hour for our housekeepers. That keeps our housekeeping costs about $20 to $25, maybe $30 per housekeeping. And a lot of you are paying $70 to $120 per housekeeping. You see how that cost reduction can really save the day when everything gets tough? See, by in-housing our housekeeping staff, in-housing our management, in-housing everything, and paying their salaries and having them run 100 properties, our operating costs are much, much lower. So a scaled in-house operator will have a lower cost basis for all of their operations. The third type of operator is going to be the no skin in the game co-host. See, these guys that are taking 25% of your money to run your property, they don't have to pay the rent. They don't have to pay the mortgage. They don't have to pay the utilities. So if they have 100 properties just like yours, and your properties drop 70 or 80% in revenue, they still could collect 25% of whatever you are making. So they still get margin, even though the market's down entirely. Co-hosts will be one of the people who survive unscathed because they don't have any carrying costs to begin with. But the three have something big in common. I said owner-operators, scaled in-house property management, short-term rental companies, and co-hosts. All three of them are active managers of their portfolios, just like the day trader doing their own trading. So the people who are going to die in this market are going to be people who do rental arbitrage like me, but outsource their housekeeping. They don't have any control of their housekeeping. They outsource their management, like to VAs or call answering service, handymen that they get on Thumbtack that charge way too much money for the work that they do. Using third-party vendors as a rental arbitrage person is going to get really expensive and your cost base will be too high. An owner that has a co-host paying 25% of top-line revenue, your costs are going to be too high. Co-hosts, you got it easy right now, so you're going to be just fine. No matter what way you do this, the only way you as a co-host go out of business is if all of your properties roll up and all of your landlord clients sell the properties, which could actually happen in the Airbnbust. So this isn't all bad in a way. If you're not in Airbnb yet, this is great for you. If you're an Airbnb host that's willing to do what it takes to survive, this is going to be great for you too, because Airbnb has this low barrier to entry, but otherwise highly volatile supply cycle. When the getting is good, which everybody was bragging, I have like a dozen students that are coaches now because they were making so much money that they're like, I can teach anybody to do this. So now I've got about a dozen students who are now coaches teaching the world how to do Airbnb because it was easy for a period of time. And then thousands of hosts jump in. See, my channel here on YouTube has been free for 5+ years, and I am at fault for probably creating 5,000 or 10,000 Airbnb hosts easy from this free content. And thus I've added a lot to the supply, driving the price down. I've probably suffered a back-end loss in my short-term rental business from my own competition I've created through free videos. It's the nature of how capitalism works. But the Young Turks even had a conversation about it this way. They said that this market is teaching hosts one of the toughest rules of capitalism, which if you just hold your price, you're not gonna survive in this market because as supply increases and demand goes down, the market will wash out. If we look at supply demand for really what it is, there's a lot to be learned here. See, let's look at a market like say Tampa, where their high season has 87% occupancy. And their low season has like say 53, maybe 60% occupancy, something like that. Well, in that market where the low season has 60% occupancy, that means 40% of hosts are going hungry. In a market where they have 87% occupancy, that only means about 13% of hosts aren't getting their places booked. Right? That's pretty good. Now, what this relationship shows is for every 100 doors, we have 87 customers. And that's a pretty decent relationship. There's some people who aren't very serious about this. It is a low barrier to entry business. Their property's part-time. They don't need the money. They're not going to play with their rates to get booked. So some sellers aren't motivated to fill up their space. Okay, so we don't need a perfect 100 to 100 relationship. But what's happened and what we haven't been honest about is the neck break growth of host supply in most areas, in most major, most popular, most obvious areas. There's a ton of new hosts. The stock market and inflation drove people to buying property, but driving up property costs means that they have higher carrying costs, they've got higher mortgage payments to service, and the rents are going up. It's getting harder and harder to fill these things up. So what did they do? They're like, well, let's put it on the short-term rental market. It cash flows better. Everybody knows the short-term rental will cash flow better than long-term rental. So now we're putting a bunch of supply into short-term rental market and driving up that supply. So now in the same market where we had 100 properties and 87 customers, we might now have 150 properties and still only 87 customers. Demand has been growing. Airbnb is talking about how demand is growing. And me, Kevin, just did a dissertation on Vacasa's Q4 guidance, and it's actually pretty bleak. And I'm gonna do a full React version on that. But what we're seeing is even though Airbnb is saying there's growth in demand, Vacasa is experiencing a decline in bookings because there's much more of a growth of supply. So now everything else combined in the economy that I don't understand because I don't buy property, so mortgage rates going up and down, blah, blah, that is going to affect homeowners in an extra way. As home prices start to slide back, that property that they bought for too much and hope to put it into the short-term rental market, thus creating a glut of supply that people can't keep up with, they're now stuck between a rock and a hard place. Right? They're not getting the mortgage paid and their property is sliding back in value. They don't have options to refi, they can't do shit. Right? So they're gonna have to sell their property at a pretty gruesome loss. And there are probably people chuckling in the background about this, like, oh, screw the rich people who buy properties. But the American dream has always been to make your own way and eventually live a quiet life, maybe on some passive income like some real estate. It's always been the best practice. So the fact that the world that we live in has driven so many people to this point is really kind of more of a sad thing. But we shouldn't be laughing at them. There are people like BlackRock who are gobbling up all the properties, and there are companies like Zillow who overpaid for so many properties. And yes, we can laugh at capitalism, but let's not laugh at the mice in the maze. We can laugh at the maze, but not the mice. It's not fair. For those of you who said you either don't have the guts or you have too much pride, sorry. But yes, there is something that you can do to get through this. There's about 3 categories that matter to keep your home in play. Now, pricing strategy and occupancy strategy is going to be the very first thing that you need to learn because you're going to have to do this yourself because the algorithms like Price Labs or Wheelhouse, they're not going to carry you through this all the way. This morning, I was talking to TJ from Rentrepreneur Summit, the one that I spoke at. Really cool guy, good friends. And he knows that I like to nerd out on pricing strategy. So he calls me up and he says, hey, I want your thoughts on some things. And of course, I kind of went nuts as always on pricing strategy. And I was talking about Wheelhouse and Price Labs. One thing that came apparent is when you use Wheelhouse or Price Labs, what you want to look for is the relationship between the base price and the number they suggest. They're going to give you a suggested base price. That number you could actually just kind of throw out the window sometimes. It could just be trash. Market to market, it could be trash. But when they say you should increase your price by 70% or decrease your price by 40%, that number you should hold on to. You see, Wheelhouse and Price Labs, they're tracking that flow of supply and demand as it ebbs up and down based on relative demand. They're the ones who have tabs on this. So if you can find what your good natural strike price for your listing is, even if Wheelhouse doesn't have a right or Price Labs doesn't have a right season to season, as it tells you to move up and down day to day, you can follow that. But you have to be the one in charge of finding out what your home base price is per your property and per the season, because that total baseline demand is really hard to nail. So Wheelhouse and Price Labs can give you that ebb and flow, but they're not going to hit the bullseye. They rarely will hit the bullseye, and that's okay. Pricing is still something that you need to manage over the top of the software that you use. And what I tell my students is if Wheelhouse or Price Labs doesn't have you booked 3 weeks out, they failed. And it's time for you to take over on price. I have a free playlist here on this YouTube channel, pricing strategy videos you need to watch. If you can understand things like lead time and contribution margin and adjacency, these are 3 concepts in the pricing strategy stuff, and pace, 4th one, that'll be fun. If you can understand those 4 things, which trust me, in just a little bit of time, you can know these things, and you can start to run your pricing strategy better. Where most hosts fail is they do not drop price soon enough or far enough to get the booking. And what you're doing is you're just missing the booking. And that's it. There's one there for you, just at a price you're not willing or didn't know you could sell it for. We float around 90% occupancy still, my portfolio. We're loyal to occupancy, we're not loyal to price. So that is a big one. Listing differentiation is going to be the second thing that you should learn about. Why do people choose some listings and not others? Right? So how you do your photos, which photo is first, what order your photos are in, how you do your title, what your description says. These are going to be things. But what amenities to put in your place, how to market your amenities, what color palette to choose when you do your design. These are all examples of listing differentiation. If you can look at your competition and go, these 3 people always are crushing it, and I think there's room for a 4th listing like them, just copy them. But if you see that there's a bunch of ragtag stuff in your market, but nobody's going like jungle boho, or nobody's doing a gothic theme in your city or something like that, you can try something new that no one else has done before and see if you can carve out a new market. The thing Airbnb loves to do is push unique listings. So if you do something no one else is doing, you have a higher likelihood of getting fed than swimming with the school of fish and doing some modern contemporary BS like everyone else is doing, or doing rustic farmhouse or mid-century. If you do what everyone else is doing in your design, you're going to get the results that they get. The only time you should copy somebody is if you find some market leaders that are crushing it. Otherwise, get a little bit experimental, get a little bit brave, and have some fun with it. And third, you need to keep up on how Airbnb's algorithm is working. This is a big deal. They just changed this arguably from an interest algorithm to a satisfaction algorithm. Now, they still have elements of interest. They still care about your views. They still care about your occupancy percentage. They still still care about stuff like that. But what I think they're doing is they're trying to increase guest retention. And this is instead of adoption. Airbnb's always been focused on adoption. They want new users on the host and guest side. So an interest algorithm will get people to sign up to be interested and look around in properties and have their first experience. Well, Airbnb's hit a phase where they believe they're probably reaching some sort of critical mass and growth on the traveler side. And so with that, they need to focus on retention. So a satisfaction algorithm will push the listings that satisfy their current community the most. And so, for example, I did a previous video where I show you that if you search for a month-long stay in a market, like in Dallas, you'll find in the reviews that it will tell you if somebody stayed for a long period of time. What this shows you is when somebody's doing a monthly stay search, they're going back and looking at previous reservations and looking for somebody who is satisfied with a month-long stay. And so if you search for a month-long stay, they're gonna pull listings that have satisfied other guests who wanted a month-long stay. I feel the same thing is gonna happen with key amenities like disabled accessible, pet friendly, things with a hot tub or a pool or a gym. Key amenities like that, they're gonna look and see what the review rating was, what the overall review, what the overall sentiment was for that old reservation, and push it to the top. If you understand how Airbnb's algorithm pushes listings up and pushes them down, you'll rank better, you'll find better guests, you'll stay full. You have to be loyal to your channels. VRBO is much more neutral. You just have to drive good value on VRBO. That's really nice. Your direct bookings, you get to call the shots. And there is a difference between being direct booking capable, where you have a website where you can charge guests directly, and actually having a direct booking campaign where you're going out and finding them, or they're finding you on Google. There's two completely different conversations there. And we will talk about that in the future too. Yes, a lot of you are gonna go out of business because a lot of you are passive investors, and that's okay. If you want to stay in business, you're going to have to fire your co-host, save the 25%, and you're gonna have to get to work running your own company now. You didn't know that you signed up to be a business owner, but if you're gonna keep that house, you're gonna have to become a business owner. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.